Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Force here with some more Elder Scrolls Online. We've gotten a further lift of the NDA. We can talk about a lot. So that's what we're going to start doing here. I've been playing this game a ton, and I want to provide you guys with coverage of it. So what are we talking about today? Well, today's video is a matter of perspective. I'm doing two things here. Number one, I'm showing you a full dungeon run. This is not like this isn't one of the public group dungeon. It's not one of the public dungeons. It's not the group instance dungeons. This is equivalent to any of those small caves or catacombs or ruins that you experienced in Skyrim, Oblivion, or Morrowind. You know, in Skyrim, when you'd come across that little cave sign on your heads-up display, and you'd walk over and you'd find some mysterious cavern with enemies in there and all sorts of fun stuff like that. That is what this is equivalent to, which is a small little area. You'll find some enemies. There'll be a little head boss, and there's usually a story that's told either through NPCs or through story that's left in books or notes throughout the environment. Now, that's not what we're really focusing on. You're going to see a full run of this, but what we're focusing on is perspective. Now, what you'll have noticed so far in the video is that we've been consistently switching between the first person and third person view. Basically, I did two back-to-back runs, and in one run, I did full third person. In the other run, I did first person. And I'm just splicing this footage together to sort of give you guys a compare and contrast so you can see how these two things stack up with each other when it comes to the combat and the gameplay. Now, before I give you my opinion on both perspectives and which one I prefer, I'd like to do a little bit of a history lesson. If you are unaware, well, number one, this game is being developed by ZeniMax Online Studios and not Bethesda, so not the people who made Skyrim, Morrowind, and Oblivion, or the people who made the Fallout series. This is a different company that's under the ZeniMax umbrella. It's sort of a confusing structure, but all you need to know is that Bethesda and ZeniMax Online Studios are affiliated, but they're not the same company. It's not the same studio. So, why I'm mentioning this is because when this game was first announced, when interviews came out after the announcement of ESO, people were wondering about perspective, if you could play in first person or not, or if it was going to be like a traditional MMO. And their initial response was that this game was going to be primarily played in third person perspective. In fact, they had designed the game up until that point with third person in mind. Now, when those interviews went out, there was an uproar in the traditional single-player Elder Scrolls community, and understandably so, because this was being billed as an Elder Scrolls derivative game, and most people play Elder Scrolls games. Most people I know, and I myself, played Elder Scrolls games in the first person because that's how the single-player games were designed. They were designed with first person in mind. So it was a little strange to people to hear that this game wasn't, and that was just the case. Throughout a majority of its development, this game was primarily focused and designed around the notion that people would be playing in the third person. A lot of it has to do with just, you can see more. There's more situational awareness. And when you're dealing with a game, number one, that has respawning mobs, which traditional Elder Scrolls games don't. You're moving forward in dungeons, and you're never worrying about mobs respawning behind you. So that's not a problem that you have to deal with, especially when we talk about big group content. When you're playing a single player or whatever, it's not as big as a deal. But at big group content, that could be a huge issue if people weren't aware of what's going on behind them. And what's the response? If you're playing in first person, you're going to constantly spin in circles. It's not really. There's just more situational awareness. Also in PvP, if you have the option between third and first person, since you can see more in third person, that gives you more of an advantage in PvP. But after the community came out and said, what the hell? Like, we want to play this game in first person because you're telling me it's an Elder Scrolls game, and Elder Scrolls games are played in the first person. At least that's what we've grown accustomed to over the years. And so after that big community outcry, they went back and they actually added in first-person combat animations. So whenever you're seeing me switch to first-person here, watching me pull back a bow or cast a spell or anything, those animations were not initially put into the game. In fact, they didn't even talk about adding them into the game until, I guess it was about a year ago when they talked about it. I think it was in late winter or early spring of 2013 when they said, we've heard your cries, we will be adding first person into the game. So why is that important? Well, because this game's been in development for over 5 years, and a majority of that time was focused on third person view. First person is fairly new. As a result, after showing you some gameplay, after trying both myself, I have to say, when it comes to combat, I think first person's kind of rubbish. I just don't think it plays very well. I don't think it looks very well. I hate feeling like I've got blinders on. You just can't see as much. There's just not that situational awareness, that word that keeps coming up. It's just not there as much. And again, sure, you can spin it around in circles to check your left and right and check behind you, but it's just so much easier when you're pulled back in that third person, when you've got that extra field of view. That's of course my opinion, but beyond that aspect, again, it is the notion that this game just looks better, and I think it plays better in third person because a majority of the development time was dedicated to that very thing. It just seems very obvious, and I wanted to let people know because people may not be aware of that fact. And again, this isn't to crap on it. I think it's got its merits, and you know, something that I've found with this game, I've been playing it a ton for these past couple of weeks now. Something that I found with this game is I am playing it much differently than I have many other MMOs in the past. I am playing it much more like a single player Elder Scrolls game, and I am enjoying it a heck of a lot more as a result. When I first tried this game, I was playing through it like I play any old MMO. What does that mean? Not reading a damn thing, skipping all of the dialogue, and just running from quest objective to quest objective. Now, when I got into the beta recently, and I've had a lot of time with it now, I said, let me approach this differently. Let me try to actually get into this like I did with Skyrim, Morrowind, and Oblivion. Let me try to dive deep, learn about the world, learn about the history and what's going on, the conflicts between different races, all that stuff. And I've been enjoying it so much more in doing that. And part of that, for a lot of people, will be first-person perspective. So even though my opinion is that in terms of the combat element of this game, first person just does not hold a candle to how it plays and how it looks in third person. Because again, the combat animations, most of the development were designed for third person, and then they've just had to sort of glue on these first person attacks for all of the different spells and the different attacks with all of the different weapons. Again, fairly new development, and it just seems fairly obvious. But first person definitely still has its merits, and if you play the game like I've been playing the game, you'll probably still do a first person from time to time to just sort of get more immersed into the world. And I think moving throughout the environment is just fine. In fact, I think it looks great in first person, but again, it's just that combat that for me, it just isn't as good, unfortunately. In this last bit here, I actually threw this footage in because I wanted you guys to see a prevailing problem with the game early on. Not a problem in the sense that I think it needs to be changed, but it's something that you, if it doesn't change, you can expect to encounter, and that is inventory space. Basically what happens is you start off with a limited amount, and you can purchase more bag space over time. You don't actually purchase additional bags, but you go to this bag vendor, and you purchase 10 more slots at a time, and every time you get an upgrade, it increases in price. But I spent a lot of time running back and forth to town. I eventually got to the point, you'll have noticed in this dungeon run, that I'm not really looting any crates and barrels. It's not because they're not there to loot, it's because all that really drops in there are provision materials, so stuff for making food and drink, and it fills up your backpack so fast that I've just sort of been skipping it because I want to spend more time out in the world, not more time running back to town, and filling up my backpack so quickly with provisions I was not enjoying. So I said, let me just not worry about those for now. Let me just pick up gear. I'll be happy with that. And yeah, overall, I am happy with this game. I'm having a really great time with what I've been experiencing, and I think people should really give it that old college try. Remember, it's an MMO. You're going to sink in a few hours, but once you start to get more skills and things start to open up, it gets more diverse, much more interesting, and a lot more enjoyable. Guys, thanks so much for watching this video about perspective, taking a look at first and third person, as well as my opinions on both. If you guys like the content, please subscribe. Stay tuned for more ESO coverage coming up. Keep watching and keep owning.